Welcome to a special edition of the Friday Lambda Lab. It's a special and extended edition because we're doing an extra section this time, which is going to be a Lambda robot introduction. This is, I guess, most immediately geared at people who are, going to Las Vegas in a month's time and debating whether now is a good time to start learning a new tool, with understandable trepidation. But also, longer term and forever for people who are thinking, should I give this robot thing a go? I should caveat that, robot is a mile wide, and we're going to be focusing on one particular thing today. But the one thing we're going to be focusing on, which is Lambda Robot, which lets you kind of generate and save and edit lambdas, is probably one of the ones that has the quickest payoff in terms of, learning to use it and getting value out of it immediately. So that's what we're going to be focused on today. And to talk about that, I am joined by, of course, none other than Mr. Robot himself, Erik Oehm. Welcome, Erik.
How's it going?
It's going good. It's going good.
This is exciting. I'm always watching your videos and seeing you like boom, 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 like generate lambdas and save lambdas and edit lambdas, and it's great to see OA Robot and Lambda Robot in action. So I hope your enthusiasm about it is a great testament to the great work of my team putting it together. So I'm happy to tell people more about it so we can get more people taking advantage of it.
Yes, for sure. For sure. And you gotta spread the good word. All right. Now I realize we probably should have let's see. Multiple versions. Yeah, all right. I think that you should now be able to screen share if you wanna dive on in.
Sounds good. Let me see
And
here.
I am gonna open this up on I'm traveling, so I've only got one screen. Usually when I'm live streaming, I have, the stream monitoring center off to the side so I can keep tabs on things, but I'm gonna monitor the chat on my phone so we can pick up questions there.
Gotcha. All right. I'm hoping that you guys can see my screen at this point. Give me a moment to open another window so that I can see the chat as well. Hey, there we are. Cool.
Woo!
Awesome. All right. So we got a number of questions in WhatsApp chat and from people, and we were anticipating some as well. So I compiled a list of questions, but this is supposed to be interactive. So those of you in the chat, if you have other questions, keep firing them out, and we'll try to weave them into the answers to these questions or add more as we go. But the very first thing that we should probably start with is what is a robot command. For those of you that aren't even familiar with OA Robot, OA Robot is what we call a micro automation launcher. Micro automations can be formulas, VBA macros, Python formulas, Power Queries, AI prompts, all kinds of different stuff, including also send keys. So you can send keys to the ribbon. Um, a robot command is a curated microautomation. So once you write that macro or create that formula, it kind of gets lost in a file somewhere. You don't even know where that macro is or where that formula, that lambda went. By curating it, you're giving it a friendly name, telling OA Robot where it's located. So when you need to use it at some point, down the road, it's just right there at your fingertips. And the command palette, which is the interface to OA Robot, makes it super easy for you to find and run those commands. So that's the super high level of what a robot command is. I'm going to show you two quick examples before we jump into Lambda Robot of creating robot commands, one based on a formula and one based on a macro, because those are the two most popular things that people do. So a super simple example of a formula command would be taking a value and rounding it to one decimal place. So this is no lambdas yet. This is just a super simple function of round comma one of a value. So round is a function that makes it a micro automation. You can turn micro automations into robot commands. In this particular case, we have an input cell and it's acting on that input cell. So I'm going to put my cursor on this formula and you do Control Shift O to bring up OA robot. And then plus is how you add stuff. An additional plus is how you get to adding commands. The first one in the list is formula command. The other most popular one is the VBA command, which I'll also show you an example of. So you just hit enter on Excel formula command, and it'll bring up a dialog box and let you um, uh, basically curate your command. So I'm going to call this round to one decimal. And I'm going to give it a launch code of R1 just to make it super easy to pull up. It already filled out the formula automatically. This is what we call a application expression to say substitute in here the formula of the active cell. So I'll show you what that does. And we just click OK, and we just created our first formula robot command. So if we have a formula that is pointing at a cell like this, we can bring that up, do R1, it'll come up right at the top because we gave it a launch code, hit enter, and it wrapped the existing formula with that. So if I had done it with, a more complicated formula like times two, then we can run that again, and it'll just wrap the existing formula with that function. It also works on hard-coded numbers. So if I have 123.4456, this is just a hard-coded number, and maybe I have a whole bunch of those. Whoops, a whole bunch of cells with hard-coded numbers in it. You can also run a formula command on hard-coded numbers, and it'll apply the formula and turn it back to values. So you're basically turning the formula into like a macro with no programming involved, unless you consider the formulas programming, which I do. um, so that's a super simple command that is based on a formula. Next one I'm going to show is
Just
turning a, yeah, go
just
ahead.
before you go on, a couple of things I'm going to mention. One is um, you can if you you talked from kind of launching OA Robot on, but if you don't have it, oarobot.com, go get it. Like most of the stuff we're going to be talking about today is in the free version. So yeah, go get it, install it. It's very simple to set up, and then once you have it, kind of continue on from here. The other thing is once you get it, and I saw, how do I get Lambda Robot is on your list, so we'll come to that. Once you get it, it comes with a bunch of kind of command collections that are there as sort of inspiration for the kinds of things you can do. So like take a look at those and what it does with different things. So like, for example, this one here was based on, do something to the active cell, but instead of that, active cell wrapper, you can have a clipboard wrapper so that you can do, instead of wrap with something, you can paste with something. So like, one I use in esports land a lot is like copy a range and like paste with sum or paste with round or something like that. What's the sum of all the answers to level 4? You can just copy it, go back to the bonus and paste with sum. Um,
Yeah, that's a
but
great point. And when I do the characters, I'm going to do a Lambda example and turn that into a robot command. I'll also make a variety of that. That's the paste version, just so people can see that. Because that's one of my favorite things is like the pastes, all of the different kind of paste specials that you can create. You can get really creative with how you do that. All right, so the next one is turning a macro into a command. So Bo has a great macro that he created for turning background colors into color numbers, and he has his own way of doing it that also captures gradients and special types of backgrounds. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to I'm going to create a command that turns this into bow colors. The way that I'm going to do that is I've already, in this workbook that I have open, I already copied in um, his, uh, his function and created a little macro called fill with bow colors. So that just takes the selection, it loops through each of the cells, and it applies his function and sticks those values into the cells. So it's a super simple macro. In order to turn that macro, and honestly, like nowadays, you can write macros using AI is really great at writing macros. You don't have to be a VBA expert anymore to do this kind of stuff. You can record macros. There's all kinds of things that you can do. But what we're going to do is we're going to do that plus plus again, and we're going to do VBA. And when that comes up, it's going to be pre-filled already with a name that it figured out from the macro name that your cursor was left in. So all of this gets filled out automatically. It's hooked up to this fill with bow color. All I have to do is just click OK. And now I have a fill with bow color command. I can go ahead and run that, and boom, those are the cool. He does some really neat things here with determining what the colors are that are used in the gradient, what the angle is of the gradient, and all that kind of stuff. It's pretty nifty. So so that's how easy it is to create a macro command from the macros that you currently have available. One thing to note is under Trust Center, you do have to have this trust access to the VBA project object model checked under macro settings. That's what enables us to determine your cursor location. It was sensing that my cursor location was in this macro, and that's how I was able to fill out the properties automatically. If you don't have that set, you can still create one. You just have to fill out more stuff manually. All right, so that was that. Yes, so getting started. Where do you get Lambda Robot? How do you get OA Robot? OA Robot's a simple install from oarobot.com. It'll ask you to register. You give an email address. It'll send you a 4-digit code. You type that in, and then you're all set. In order to get what we call command collections, a command collection is just a workbook that has some definitions stored inside of it of what commands have been defined. So when we just created those two commands, we created the rounding command and the bow colors commands, that created some metadata that's stored inside of this workbook. So if I don't save this workbook, it's just like when you create a Power Query or a macro or a Lambda. If you don't save your workbook, you're not saving your robot commands. And just like those other things, it's also stored in the workbook. So if I create a command and I want to share it with you, I can just email you the file or put it on OneDrive. You open it up, and then you have those commands available. If you don't want to have to open up the workbook in order to get the commands available, then you register it. And registering is basically there's an at menu that lists all of your command collections. And you can add command collections using the plus menu. You can add them this way. Jack's comp bot can be added. That's a GitHub syncable. If there's a command in a command collection that's in GitHub, you can put the URL to it, and then it'll make it syncable. So every time there's an update, you can just ask to get the latest. And the other thing you can do is use setup codes. So a setup code is a code that you could just type straight in here, 42EW. And so when I type that in, it says Lambda Robot. And if I hit enter, it'll download that command collection automatically and register it automatically. So that's the easiest way to get Lambda Robot is through that. When you first install OA Robot, it's going to open up a getting started guide. That getting started guide will go through a lot of this stuff. So I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time on that right now. So we can get right into Lambda Robot stuff. The
And
other,
just to mention, the getting started guide at the back also has these setup codes for a bunch of different, including Lambda Robot, but several others as well. So again,
that's
just
right.
there's lots and lots that we will not have time to touch on today, and we're kind of mostly keeping it to Lambda Robot, but
Yes.
there's tons of inspiration for like the kinds of commands that you can come up with. You'll want to make them your own, but you'll get lots of ideas there.
So one other important thing to know is that when you type at, you'll see all of your all of your command collections. And if you hit F1 or right click and do help on all of any of these command collections, it will generate documentation based on the definitions of the commands that are in that workbook. That means that if you create your own commands, it'll generate documentation on your own command collections as well. So if you, a lot of the stuff we're going to go over right now having to do with Lambda Robot is all covered in the, well, I wouldn't say covered, but there is documentation so you can see what commands are available in Lambda Robot right in the taskbar. So this particular command collection has 27 robot commands, and you can see what they are. If you're interested to see how they're defined, you can click on one of those and it'll show you the definition. This is basically based on the metadata of how we defined that command. So that's just a good thing to know about. You can also do F1 on the commands themselves. So uh, if I do help or F1 on a specific command, it'll actually take me to the documentation and scroll down to that specific definition as well. So I'm going to close that to give us more screen real estate. And now the next question is, how do I generate a Lambda?
Now we're getting
Um,
into it.
yeah, let's just jump right in. So I'm doing the my first as our first Lambda. I'm going to do a super simple one. We want to list the characters in of a text string. So I used to do this with mid and split apart with the length of the characters and all that stuff. But now, come on, this is 2025. We got to use reg extract for this.
Oh, careful, careful. You're showing your 2024 there. The new
Oh
themes
no.
the new theme for this year is to use _X instead of period
Okay.
because that
Okay.
captures
Backslash
the
X it
weird
is. Little X or big
I don't
X?
I think it's big. I don't know if it matters, but I think it's supposed to be big X. It won't make a difference here, but for some of the weird compound emojis,
Ah,
_X will extract them exactly as written, whereas if you do it on period, it will match multiple characters. It's like regex is better than Excel for the kind of, oh, this one emoji is two characters, but it still sometimes trips. So yeah,
great.
_X is the way to go.
Even better, even better, even better. So in this particular case, I'm doing kind of like a two-step process where I'm first doing a split here, and then in a separate cell, I'm doing a transpose because I want to list the characters. So the way that it works is if you want to generate a lambda, you do GL for generate lambda, and GL is what we call a launch code. It's just a couple letters that you can use to search for something and it'll prioritize it. You'll notice that there's a lot of things that it finds when I type GL in here. But this one came right to the top because I assigned it when I curated that command in Lambda Robot. I assigned it GL to make it easier to find with just those two letters. So you can, when you have your own list of macros that you turn into robot commands, in your head, you want to think, what are the what's the letter or a couple letters that is the fastest possible way to find that macro for you in your list, so you can be super fast when you're running this. So I'm going to hit enter in order to run that robot command. And we're going to get a nice little dialog box here that that basically what it does is it takes the cell that we're on. We started on the answer cell, and it's tracing the precedence of the formula back until it finds a cell that's hard coded. So in this case, Dermot's name here is the input, and that's the hard coded cell. So it determined that that is probably what you wanted to have as your input parameter. And the rest of this stuff is just kind of the helper cells to get to the answer. So if you look here, you can see what it is that it created. It created each of those helper cells, it turned into let steps, and it names them based on the surrounding labels. You don't have to label it. If it doesn't find a label, it'll call it step one, step two, step three. But it is nice if you do label it, because it'll kind of write nicer code for you. So the only thing that we have to do right here, I'm going to go through these buttons more in a more complicated example later on. But if you're satisfied with this, you can just click OK, and then you have generated a macro, or you've generated a Lambda. So the Lambda is not yet a saved Lambda, it's just a Lambda definition in the cell. One thing to know is that at this point, right after you create this, you can still do Control Z, Excel's regular undo, and it'll get you back to where you were. So if you do create one and you're not happy with it for some reason, you can do Control Z and undo. There's not very many robot commands that Control Z works on, but that's one of them. There's a
Just,
number of checks. Go ahead.
I was just one kind of best practice I've picked up, which I would recommend to people who are kind of starting off with this, which is either make your last step be very simple or just a reference to the previous step,
Mm-hmm.
or as well as generate Lambda statement, there's a paste Lambda statement option. And the reason I say this is because when you generate Lambda statement on a step, that like whatever calculation was there gets replaced with the Lambda, and the calculation is baked into the Lambda. But if you want to kind of change something earlier and regenerate, you won't have all the pieces there to do that. Whereas if you either just do a simple step, just reference the previous step, or if you paste Lambda statement so that the Lambda appears somewhere else, but you still have all your workings intact, then if you want to say, oh, now there's whatever, going from level 3 to level 4, there's a new rule or whatever it is, then it's easier to add that.
That's a great point. And notice that here I have basically another helper cell that's just referring to this cell. When I do generate Lambda on that, it doesn't add another step that's just saying equals the previous step. It understands that you just mean I want to create it here instead of there. So we're getting the exact same Lambda, whether you do it in a separate cell referencing this or not. And when you do your copy, I think paste Lambda.
Yep.
Yeah. So you even though we only copied the first cell of a spilled range, you can just copy the first cell and paste it, and it'll paste the Lambda as well.
I
So
will say,
that's
just as a general observation, the number of like little quality of life things that you've picked up, like that as a good example of like you just copy the first cell. We'll probably touch on it later of, if you you know, reference the third cell of a range, or if you reference like all of a range except the first cell or something like that. Like these are things that do not translate well to let statements, and robot kind of lets you get away with it. Which especially in competition setting, trying to kind of whip a lambda together quickly, makes it extremely forgiving. Where like just for example, if you have a list where you sort three different columns. If you refer to just one of those columns, that's not a dynamic reference because you'd actually need to, use index or take and drop or whatever to isolate the second column from the dynamic reference. But if you do it with robot, it will
Yeah,
say, oh, you referenced the middle column of this range, you must mean index, row zero, column two, or whatever.
yeah.
It's very good for like the
Like
extent to which you have to make your model really ready to be put into a let, like compared to, with my Lambdafy or something like that, it is much more forgiving.
it also checks its answers. So when it generates the lambda, it verifies that the answer to the lambda gets the same answer as what the original formula was. And if it doesn't, it'll tell you. So it's not going to give you a lambda that is returning a wrong result without like warning you or whatever. It also, if you have a really complicated model and you try to create a lambda for something that is either going to take a super long time or it's just going to be a gigantic, super long, crazy lambda, it warns you like, oh, this lambda is going to be over 25 steps or whatever. Are you sure you want to continue? And most of the time, the answer is probably no, you don't want to continue. You have to be careful in competition if you like copy a formula down 1,000 rows, and that's considered 1,000 formulas if you don't do it as a spilled array, and then you try to generate a lambda off of that. It's you're basically telling it I want 1,000 let steps.
Yeah.
So
But
uh,
but but also if it's not dynamic and if, the thing that it's pointing to scales up and down, this will be VStack 1,000 different steps, or, even if it's just VStack 10
yes,
different steps, it won't become 11 different steps if you expand the other one. So you do need to be kind of thinking dynamic array wise.
yes, that is definitely true. And we do have tools in Formula Robot, which is a whole nother thing. I'll show you a couple quick things that make it easier for you to make things dynamic as well. All right, so for this one, we created our Lambda and, oh, I just deleted the Lambda, but so now we've generated our Lambda, and the next thing we're going to do is we're going to save that Lambda. So right now, it's all we've generated only in the cell. It's not a named Lambda in the name manager. Um, I no longer ever open the name manager for the purposes of lambdas, and I never use the AFE, the Advanced Formula Editor. I only use Lambda Robot for doing my lambdas. And the way that you can save a lambda is save lambda, SL. So Dim, I see you use save lambda as a lot. It does the same thing when you have never saved this lambda before, but you can use save lambda in either situation. Uh, the intent of save lambda as is, let's say you edit a lambda that you want to clone as a different one. It's kind of like save as in Excel. You have your workbook open. You don't want to save
Yep.
that workbook. You want to save it as a different lambda. That's the purpose of save lambda as, but either one will work. So when I do save lambda, it'll give us a little dialog where we can specify what we want to call that lambda. Because I did this in a cell that doesn't have any labels around it, it didn't give us an automatic name, but it would have said list characters here. And I'm also going to give it a command name. I'm going to call that list characters. And we'll say uh, lists characters below, something like that. Um, Also, just so you know, this more button gives you the ability to add uh, additional information about your Lambda. Like I can go in here and say this is text to be split or whatever. And this documentation will work into the some other features that I'll show you in a minute. You can also go to an export and export this in a format that you can create this into a gist if you want to do that. But now if we go into the name manager, you'll see that this list characters is already there. This is a table that I'm gonna has data in it over here. So now we have our Lambda. That's how easy it is to generate a Lambda. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to turn that into a robot command. So again, just like we did with the round function, you put your cell on the cell that is that has the Lambda being invoked, and you do plus plus and do formula command. It will detect that your cell is on a Lambda. It'll guess what the name is. It'll use oh, actually, this is the name that we gave it in the save Lambda dialog and the description. We could assign it a launch code if we wanted to make that LC to make it easier to pull up. And it put the formula in here, and it also added a formula dependency. So this is how it knows what the definition of that Lambda is, so that when you run this command in a workbook that has never heard of this Lambda before, it'll install it automatically on the fly. So when you're doing esports, you typically just want to import your entire library so you have everything available. But when you're doing modeling and that kind of thing, you don't want to give your clients like your whole collection of Lambdas. You just want to surgically install them as you need them. So OA Robot works great for you use the Lambda through OA Robot and it installs it automatically. So now we have this list characters. It's saying this in parentheses because I already have another command down here somewhere that's called list characters. So that's a duplicate. So that's why it's showing that. But now uh, if I were to refer to a cell over here and do list characters, boom, we get it. It wraps that existing formula with list characters, and boom, you have your listed characters. So uh, that is saving, generating a Lambda and saving a Lambda, and also turning a Lambda into a robot command. Um,
So, a
let's
couple
see.
of quick things before we go on.
Yeah,
One, just on exactly what you were talking about. I think you told me this, or maybe Jack did, or somebody did anyway. Um, the kind of workflow that you'll typically learn first is, generate a Lambda, then save a Lambda. But if you're in a cell that can be lambdafied, then you can just run save Lambda or save Lambda as directly
that's a
there as
great.
well. And
Yep.
it'll give you the generate dialog box. And then once you're done with that and happy with it and hit OK, then it'll give you the name dialog box and you just go kind of straight through in one move. So
Yes,
that's a bit of a time saver.
that's exactly right. So if I go back to this pound, I can do, so this is definitely not a Lambda to be saved at this point because we haven't generated the Lambda yet. So it'll figure out, oh, you must want to do that and then name it. And boom, you've just created a Lambda. That's how quick it is to create a Lambda. So you can imagine in competition when you're in level 3 and you create something that you want to reuse and other levels, you can create those very quickly and they're ready to go to build as building blocks for your later levels.
And I will say, if you want sort of inspiration on robot in action, Jeremy Freelove's channel, he does like esports case walkthroughs, and he usually does pretty kind of robot heavy solves. Like he'll, solve levels 1 and 2, turn those into lambdas, reuse those all the way throughout, and like lots of he has lots of little kind of best practices you'll notice if you pay attention to how he's doing things. So highly recommend. The other thing before we go on is we had a question in the chat. Is it possible to copy a command from a collection to another? Thinking about copying a VBA command, for example, since I can't create one with a free license. So I know it is possible to copy a command. I don't know the extent to which you can like copy and change a command, a VBA command if you're
So,
on a free license.
so editing, so the way it works with the licensing is there's in the plus plus menu, you can see all the different types. So the free version, you can edit and run the Excel formula commands, and you're also able to run anything that was created with a pro license. So the pro license gives you the ability to edit these types of commands. So that's kind of like for, kind of authoring commands, and then anybody with a free license can run those commands. So if you, the pro license is $100 for a year. So it's, I hope, fairly reasonably priced. And when you spend that money, think about all of the free value you're getting from Lambda Robot, because that is all free.
Yep.
Um,
Um,
uh, so
Specifically,
in order to create a robot command or to copy an existing robot command and edit the one that you copied, you do need to have the pro version to do that. Or you can
cool.
ask a friend that has the pro version to do it for you and send it back to you. Or you can sign up for the 30-day free trial and cancel before the 30 days and create all of the robot commands you want in 30 days and then, uh,
Wh-
you know, and
which
just run
conveniently
them
would take you
thereafter.
right from here up to Vegas.
That's right.
It's, the funny thing is,
And
I would feel guilty about, mentioning this if it was anybody else, but I've heard you tell people this so many times. Like, yeah, you can just set it up
I,
on the pro trial and then
I've,
run it for free.
I'm confident enough that you'll create a bunch of robot commands in the first month, and after that, after you cancel it, you're going to have all the regrets in the world, and you're going to wish that you had it back. So, uh, creating robot commands, I should warn you, is a bit addicting. So I'm kind of like a drug dealer of OA robot commands, because once you start creating OA robot commands, you'll have thousands like me. I have I think my latest count is I have about 1,500 robot commands.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
All right, so the next thing is editing a Lambda. So how do you edit a Lambda once you have one? And this, it doesn't matter if it's a Lambda that was, whether it was created with Lambda Robot or not created with Lambda Robot. Any Lambda you can use Lambda Robot to edit. That's the first thing I do when I get my hands on other people's, color, libraries of lambdas, is I start using this to peek inside of them. So the way it works is you have to be on a cell with an invoked lambda. That means that it's equals some lambda name and whatever parameters you're passing to it. As soon as it's wrapped in other stuff and it's part of a bigger formula, you can't edit it that way. It has to be just an invoked lambda.
I will say
And
it doesn't have to be called on parameters. You can also just have the Lambda name with
yes,
nothing after it, because that's often what I do
yep,
when I'm poking around with like if it's embedded in a bigger formula and I just want to edit the Lambda, I'll just put the name in a cell next to it and edit there and then
yes,
go back to it. But yep.
that's true. So when you do edit Lambda, what it's doing is it's going into the name manager and fetching that definition, and it's substituting that in right here. So it's the reverse of the save Lambda, essentially. And once you have that, it also applies our formula formatting to that. That's part of Formula Robot. If you prefer things to be bow style, you can type bow and that'll run compact formula format, which makes it much less readable, but a lot shorter. If you do FF or unbow, that will do format formulas and make it pretty again. If it's in this particular case, it didn't actually put it to multiple lines, because the way that the format formula works is it'll only wrap to multiple lines when it formats it if it's longer than a certain number of characters. So this is a short enough character, a short enough formula that the format formula doesn't spread it out. But nonetheless, we're editing the definition of this. You can go in here and mess around with it. And then once you've made your change, like if I made a change like that, or I guess it is a capital X, so we won't make that change. But but if we made a change to that and wanted to save that back, we just do save Lambda again, and that is saving it back to the name manager. So any changes that we made are now back in the name manager. And you can see when when you're in that edit mode, there's a little tooltip cell note in here that says you're editing this list characters. If I was to clone this and if I wanted to make a one that's list them across or whatever that doesn't have the transpose, I could do a save lambda as and then give it a different name like list characters across. And now I have a list characters across. I could edit that, take out this transpose. That's not the,
No, I just need a comma.
and now we have save lambda. So now we have list characters across is a separate lambda. One other thing I want to show is you mentioned it earlier, Dim, the paste variety of this. So we created this list characters was the one that we created. I'm going to right click on that and I'm going to do duplicate. That'll clone this. And then we're just going to make a modification to it. I'm going to call this paste list characters. Paste list of characters. Pastes list of characters below. And the only thing I'm going to change is instead of this having the formula of the active cell here, there's a application expression called clipboard. There's a lot of documentation now on application expressions in the help. I'll show you how to get to that as well. So we just click OK. So now we have paste list of characters. So what's cool about this is I can take this cell over here, come over here and do paste list of characters. I should have changed the launch code for that. And boom. Not only did it list the characters, but it referred to the clipboard, the range that was copied. So it substituted it in what we copied. So that's pretty slick. One other thing is that so right now I don't have anything copied. So it doesn't really make sense to run paste list of characters because it's not in a context that it should be run. So there's something that you can set for that called, I'm going to change this to paste list characters for my launch code. Down here, there's something called user context filter, and there's all kinds of cool stuff that you can do with this. But what we're going to do is we're going to say only show me this command if the clipboard has some Excel data in it. That means that when we bring up the command palette, paste list characters is grayed out. It's out of context. But if I have something copied, then it makes sense to show that command. So that's a way, when you get a lot of commands, you only really want them to show up when it's appropriate to show up. So if I wanted to transpose this, I have T for transpose that shows up, but if I'm in a cell that has nothing in it, when I do T to transpose, different things show up because it only makes sense to transpose if you're in a spilled array. All right. Where did we leave off in our questions? We talked about, we edited our lambdas, we saved a lambda, we duplicated our commands, we did a save as of a lambda. Next, I want to talk about some best practices. Um, we touched on a couple of them to earlier. One is that you want to be very careful about trying to generate lambdas off of things that aren't designed in a dynamic way, or have like too many formulas. If they've been copied down the old-fashioned way, that usually is not a good candidate for generating lambdas. Um, the other thing I'm going to show you is marking your inputs. So I have some data. This is some um, this is the Road to Las Vegas points for the 9 different battles, just to have something to play with. So So I was going to do an example here. We're going to create a lambda that calculates the average adjusted points. Average adjusted points is the points, the average of the points excluding the 3 lowest point values. Just so if you have a bad day, it doesn't affect your average point score. So we're going to grab some scores from uh, let's see, we're going to grab some scores. We're going to do a filter of RTLV, which is that Excel table, and we're going to get the points from that, and we're going to filter that to only RTLV name equals the cell up here. So now we have some scores. Let's So these are just Pyramid's scores. Oh, slacking, man. Oh,
Weak sauce, weak sauce.
embarrassing, embarrassing. So we'll
It's
sort.
okay. We're gonna drop those ones.
Yeah, those are going to be gone. So we sort those, and we can filter. We're not really filtering. We're just going to do a drop of the first 3 of those. So now we have our good keeper scores, and we're going to take an average of that. So this is this is something that you could have obviously written all in one cell. You didn't need all of these helper cells to do this. Oh, we can apply our round 1 that we wrote to round that to 1 decimal place. Okay, so now we're going to turn this into a lambda, and I'm going to show you some things that happen when we do this. So if I do a generate lambda on this, we get some weirdness, and I've seen you battle with this, Dim. Uh, it's the way that generate lambda works is it's following the formula backwards in time through the helper cells until it hits things that are hard coded. So in this case, it's more than just the name that's hard coded, it's also the whole Excel table. So it's sensing that these 2 columns here are also inputs. So it turned those into parameters um, of this. So there's some things that you can do in this dialogue to fix that. You can make these steps based on DIM's feedback. You can actually skip making them steps, and you can go straight to exclude. So if I say exclude, it'll take those out and incorporate them into the formula. So it's still referring to those, but it's getting rid of them as a step or a parameter. So that does work, but there's an easier way to do that. So I'm going to cancel that. I'm going to go back over here. And in this input cell, I'm going to, this is one of the commands as part of Lambda Robot. It's called mark as input cell. What this does is you are telling it ahead of time that this is the parameter. So when it traces back, if there's other things that are hard coded, it knows those aren't going to be parameters. This is the parameter. The other thing is that this could have been a formula. There could have been a whole bunch of other logic that fed into this, and this could be a formula. So you can mark a formula as an input cell, and it'll stop when it goes back and keeps tracing and tracing and tracing. When it gets to the cell, it won't keep going backwards and keep tracing and tracing from there. It'll stop right here and say, oh, this is an input. So those are two really important best practices is to really be thinking about what it is that your inputs really should be, and being careful about generating a lambda when you're pointing at something that might have a whole bunch of other formula logic that you don't even want to be part of your lambda. So now when we go in here and do generate lambda, now we just get one parameter and we're good to go. Some people have asked questions about why I do this. So there's some extra steps up above, and Dim, I see you even in competition removing these, which I think you have a lot of luxury of time in your competitions. If you if you feel that you have to remove some redundant steps from your lambda, but the reason that I do this is basically more of a good programming technique for lambdas, which is that these are basically external references. So the way that I set up Lambda Robot is the way that I want it to be, which is that if you have anything that is either hard coded or external references, I want those to be referenced at top, because those might be some things that if they're mixed into a long lambda, then I don't know what's referencing outside of my lambda, and that bothers me. I want to see those up front. You can very easily do what Dim does, which is select those and exclude them, and then that just incorporates them in. But honestly, Dim, in competition, you get the same answer either way. You might want to just click OK and move on. So so either way, oh, and just one other thing about this dialogue we can talk about now that we're getting a little bit deeper into it. When you make changes to this, if you don't know what you're doing, and you mess something up, if I make this an optional parameter and then I turn that into a step, and then like I'm not happy with what did it turn to a step? That didn't even seem like it worked. But whatever you do in this dialogue using these buttons, if you mess things up too bad, you can always just go back and hit reset, and it'll take you back to the very beginning of exactly how it was, and you can start all over again. So you can click on these buttons with reckless abandonment and know that if you don't like what you end up with, you can always hit reset and go back to the beginning. So that's just another kind of best practice. Um, if so just to run through these really quick, this makes something optional. If you have in your formulas, if you have an is omitted in your cell in your formula, and then you generate a lambda, it'll automatically detect, oh, you have an is omitted pointing at this cell. I'm going to make it optional automatically. So if you do use is omitted, you'll get an optional parameter by default. But you can also just make it optional. It's just putting the brackets around it. Um, and then you can also convert things to steps, so that moves it down as a step. You can also take things down here and move them up as a parameter. There's a bug. I could tell that there's a bug
I think
because
it's probably because they're both called name. Um, is my
yeah,
guess.
I think you are correct. But we will fix that. Um, if you ever do get a debug error, hit end and try again. That's the best. Do not try to debug in competition. Just hit end, try again. Um, so the you can move things back and forth between steps and parameters. And exclude is basically like if I go through and exclude these one by one, you can actually see what's happening off to the right. It's incorporating what was in those steps. It's like substituting this. You copy that and paste it right there. That's basically what it's doing when I do the exclude. So if you just keep excluding until you get to the very end, you're just going to have a lambda that has no steps, essentially. So you're just excluding the steps. It's not taking out any logic. If you, I can't do a two value on these because they're too big. There's too much data in here. But let's say you have a little table that is like has like your arrow conversions in it or something like that. You can turn that into a value and it'll take what's in those cells and turn it into a a hard coded array right into your model. So that's what that one is. And then expand is the biggest mystery one. The way expand works, I don't think it's going to work here, is we stop following the trail of formulas when we hit a named range. So if you name a range, that's kind of it's not making it a parameter like the input, but it's saying don't keep following the formulas. So that way you can kind of cut it off. That's a way that you can kind of cut off the following of the formulas if you name a range kind of along the way. But at sometimes you named a range for a different reason and you actually did want that logic in your Lambda. That's what expand is for. Expand is you'll be able to select one that's pointing at a named range. You do expand, and it'll actually continue following that named range and fill in the logic beyond that named range. Does that make sense?
It makes sense to me.
Pretty
Um,
pretty.
I, I, I
It's
think that
it's
would
definitely
also,
more it's definitely more advanced of a feature, but
I think that's also in the situation you described where like the name was not hard coded, but was the result of some other calculations, and you real slightly improbable, but let's say you realize, oh wait, I didn't want to start from the name. I wanted, that's indexing on the list by a certain number. I wanted to start from the number. Then you could expand that name as well, and
yes,
then kind of make some earlier step in the process be your input.
yes,
But
yep,
I will say
exactly.
I don't know that I've ever used expand other than exploring what expand does.
You know,
Uh,
when about a week ago, somebody asked a question about the buttons, and I put together a little thing to explain like what the buttons were. And I tried expand for the first time in 6 months, and it didn't work. So we actually put a bug fix in for it. So it actually wasn't working, and nobody reported it. So I don't think anybody's really using that, including me. But it is a feature, and now it now works. But I think we broke something else in the converting between steps and parameters, which we'll fix.
so a
Um,
couple of things I would suggest showing that you may be about to hit them, but
mhm.
one small thing, which is just in the average points formula, if you like cancel out of there, um, but just like you did your filter, you did your like drop three in a kind of best practices referring to an array way. But if you just do that average pointing to like the bottom six cells of sorted, I think that's a good kind of chance um, to demo the the kind of dynamification, so to speak, of the reference. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
you set me up for this one though because I tried that and it's smart enough. So if I do if I just leave off the top one and I
Hmm.
do generate lambda, it's smart enough to, oh no, it wasn't smart enough. It did a,
Oh, interesting. Takes
it
the
did a
bottom eight,
take
right?
bottom eight, which is not what we want. So, uh, so I'm not sure if that changed or not, because I was really expecting it to drop the top one. It has some like logic in there for that. The example that you were talking about is if I do something like the average. average of the first one and the last one and try to turn that into a lambda, it actually does take top one and take bottom one and then take the average. Oh, and do you notice anything interesting there, Dim? Look at the formula that it wrote.
Oh, you've added the at. Yes. Yes.
So the issue is that take actually returns an array of one value. And a lot of times when you're using, actually, I think that was Jeremy that begged for this as well. Um, Basically, certain functions don't like it when you pass it an array. It's expecting a scalar value. So now Lambda Robot and also Formula Robot, when you're using fill down and stuff like that, is smart enough to know that uh, it's returning an array of one value. So you probably want that at sign in there. Yeah, we keep making
Um,
little improvements like that.
one thing is I'm actually going to talk about this when we get to Lambda Lab in a little bit, but I noticed uh, an alarming bug in one of my lambdas during the week, which was I eventually traced it back to I had used at with the expectation that I was dealing with an array and at would take the first value, but actually what I was passing it was a range, and so the at didn't like I had tested it, with here's a row of data and I put the formula here and pointed to there, and so it worked. But then at some point, uh, I had sorry, that's a column of data. I had a row of data and had the at, and it was implicit intersection
Mm,
of a row that you're already in doesn't mean anything, and so it was erroring out, and it was erroring out depending on where I put the formula, and it was like racking my brain trying to. It took me a while to debug to figure out what had gone wrong. So I recommend at plus, mostly as a reminder to myself that I have to at plus because the plus will convert the range to an array, and then it will just take the first value. Because take I mean, in this case, it was operating on a sorted thing, so it was already an array. But
hmm
take does return a range if the input is a range, so that is one to be careful of.
Yeah, we don't do anything automatic for at plus, but we have had enough people have stumbling on certain functions like SUMIF just don't work very well in a let statement because it's expecting a range like a reference, and as soon as you turn it, it works perfectly. So if we changed this to be equals oh, that's um, is there an average if? Yes, there's an average if.
Hmm.
So if we did average if of this, no, of this, where it's what do we do? Less than 1,000 or whatever. So that gives an answer, but if we try to generate a lambda off of that, um, so it'll let you try. I'm curious what happens when we click OK. Aha. So
Ah.
when you try to save that lambda, it's not going to get good values because you are not allowed to do what we're trying to do. But it says the generated lambda is not returning the correct result. This may be because your formula is using this function, average if. Note, this function expects ranges to be passed and may not work as you expect with arrays. So we're
That's so
actually
I've never actually seen that like this is not doing what it's supposed to error, but that is very helpful, considerably
yeah,
more helpful than regular Excel is if you just write that let yourself with a countif somewhere in the middle of it.
yeah, because
That's
when
cool.
things don't work in competition, like your brain like melts. You're like, what the heck, you know? So this is like catching something that you did. I just never use count ifs every average ifs ever again, I just don't use them anymore. So I wasn't running into that, but I was getting that question from people on support.
Yep.
All right.
One other question from the chat. So earlier on, you demonstrated like if you take a constant in a cell and wrap it with round to one decimal place, that it'll just, you know, hard code the new number in. And the question was, can you control Z that?
Um, so if you do it on a hard coded value, you cannot control Z it. So the ones that you can control Z is if you create something using a send keys command, then all that's really doing is sending keystrokes to the menu. So it's as if you had clicked on things on the menu yourself. So that those are undoable because they're just Excel features being run. But VBA macros can't be undone. That's been the issue forever. And robot commands are the same way. So that's another best practice. Do things, make your commands in a way that they're non-destructive. So if you're doing stuff, you want to do stuff where it's either wrapping it with a formula, because formulas can be undone. So let me do an example
I mean, that one
of,
right there, you could take off the round in H9.
yeah. So if I do Control Shift Z, that's a robot command, that'll take off the outer function. So if I look in so this is part of Formula Robot. Remove outer function has a keyboard shortcut of Control Shift Z, which is another best practice. So another best practice is you can assign keyboard shortcuts to your commands. So the only thing faster than using OA Robot to find and run a command is to never open OA Robot and just run a keyboard shortcut. And people don't realize how many robot commands you actually use, Dim, because a lot of the ones that you use, you have keyboard shortcuts and nobody even sees the dialogue.
This is
So,
true. This is true. I have
um,
my I can tell you right off the top of my head, I have Control Shift I for import my lambdas. I have Control Shift M for mark as input. I have Control Shift F for paste exact formula. Uh, and I have Control Shift P when I'm doing FMWC, when I'm doing like financial modeling for like paste assumption cell. So yep,
yep,
I'm using it all the time. I mean, I don't think there's like practically never a case I solve where I don't hit Control Shift I because I always want my lambdas.
yep, exactly. And then the way you change that is under Edit a command. There's keyboard shortcut here, and there's a way that you can type these in using kind of a send keys format, but you can also click the dot, 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 and it'll actually let you record it in here. So if I just do Control Shift Z and click confirm, it'll put it in as well. So we make it very easy to create keyboard shortcuts. And now in the new version, this was a sneak peek here. We have a new personalized commands option. You guys haven't seen this before, but this gives you the ability to personalize with shortcuts any of your commands, and that only affects you. It's not making a change to your collection. So if you put a keyboard shortcut on mark as inputs, you can do it as a personalization. So that way, every time you get a new Lambda robot from me, a new update to it, you don't have to keep modifying it over and over again because it's like an overlay of personalizations. And there's a bunch of stuff you can personalize. You can change the names if you don't like the name that somebody came up with for their command. Something else resonates
Oh,
better
that's
with
cool.
you. You can change the description. You can disable commands. So if there's certain commands that keep popping up and you like, I never want to see that command again, you can and disable it as a personalization. So next time you get an update from them, it won't become enabled again. Um, so that's an option. You can set your own user context filters, tags, and launch codes. You can all do as a personalization. And those personalizations are also available in this right-click menu, so you can get to those personalizations through here. So that's
Cool.
a cool feature.
Kaz asked me, when you use non-OA robot Excel, do you feel totally at sea? I think the answer is it depends a bit on the case, but like if I have to do something with, maps or like cell references or anything like that, I do occasionally do like when I'm doing, MECC cases or local chapter cases, I sometimes do a kind of Lambda free solve because there's not the community there doesn't have as much kind of embedded lambdas, but sometimes it is like torture because it is like I have to like hand carve this tool before I can start building, but I've got that tool right here on my toolkit and it's better made than the one that I'm hand carving right now. So yes, it can be frustrating.
Yes, I can totally relate. When I go to client sites and I don't have OA robot, I'm like, it's kind of like when your phone battery is dead and you keep feeling it vibrate in your pocket, even though it's not even on. Like, where's my phone? I feel it. Um, the Another best practice that just popped into my mind, and I think just left my mind. No, I thought of it. Is I don't actually use Control Shift O to open Robot. I use um, a auto hotkey script that sends Control Shift O when I hit my right Alt button, and I've made that available to people. It's so much faster because you can do it without having your hands on the keyboard. You can have your hands on the mouse and use your left hand to hit the right Alt. It only works well if you don't use the right Alt key on your keyboard for anything else. Because if you're the type that uses both Alt keys when you do, other things with Alt, then you're going to be frustrated because it's going to like pop up OA robot every time you do the right Alt for other reasons. Um, I never use the right Alt key for anything else, and that is a great thing for competition because it's so much faster to bring it up over and over again. And that's something that I can make. I've made it available to people in chat before and stuff like that. So I'll put that in the WhatsApp chat, and so that people can get their hands on that.
Cool.
And you basically put it in your auto open folder so that it runs every time your computer starts, it automatically remaps your Control Shift O, and it only maps control. It only affects Control Shift O while you're in Excel. It doesn't affect Control Shift O in other applications or anything like that. Okay. Do we have time for
Alrighty.
some more?
Yeah, we should probably wrap, I don't know, I guess in like the next 15 because I want to do a bit
Okay.
of regular Lambda Lab as well, but we
All
should
right.
definitely touch on importing Lambdas
We're
before we wrap because I know that's
I'll
front
skip
of mind for
input
a lot of people.
parameters. Let's do a quick thing on auditing lambdas, and then we'll skip straight to the import thing. So so in this situation, um, I wanted to do RTLV names. So I'm going to create something that gets the average points, our average points for a bunch of names. It's
Just name,
name
I
dot
think,
name.
rather than
Yeah.
names.
I'm going to sort that array. You'll notice that there's a bunch of these pound guys in front. So I'm going to say exclude if left of this comma one equals pound. I do Control D in order to run auto fill down as in Formula Robot. That is the equivalent of doing a fill down, but it does it in a dynamic sort of way. So it put that pound there automatically. I'll show you that again in a minute. So now we're going to do our names is a filter of this list, comma, not this. Let's take a unique rows of that. And we're going to use our new average. Oh, didn't we create a lambda? Did we not create a lambda for our
Might not have
average
saved it.
points? We never saved it. R1 save lambda. Looks good to me. Looks good to me. There we go. Equals average points. Average points of this guy. So now this is an example where it's not going to work for me to just put a pound here um, because that lambda is not really set up for that. But if you use our autofill down, I have it mapped to Control D. It's not mapped like that for everybody. But when I do Control D, it'll automatically figure out, oh, I can't copy that down by just putting a pound. I'm going to wrap it in a map. So that put a map in there automatically.
That's very cool.
Um, if we that is not doing what I was expecting because we messed around with this. So I'm going to edit our Lambda, put this
And by the way,
back
I meant to say
to,
this earlier when we were talking about the smart ways that it kind of interprets, the first cell, the last cell, that kind of thing. Like it's very good at that, but don't mistake that for an ability to read your mind. So in other words, there may be a situation where there are 9 elements in the array and you mean to refer to the ninth one. And if there are 12, you still want to refer to the ninth one. And it will take it to mean that you want to refer to the last one. So like it
yeah,
does its best and it's quite smart about what you probably intend by that, but it's not, um,
good point.
it's
Yep.
not, you know, it, there are unavoidably ambiguous situations. Um, if there are 6 things and you select the bottom 3, do you mean to drop 3? Do you mean to take 3,
Personally,
etc.?
yeah, personally, I prefer to write my helper cells in a way that's dynamic from the beginning. So I tend to take the time to do that. There's most of the stuff that Lambda Robot's doing automatically for you. You can do in other ways, like if I take if I wanted these two combined together, I could refer to that as one range, but I could also do um, paste combine arrays, and it'll basically write an H stack of those together. So that just you can do all kinds of things to make things dynamic without having to allow Lambda Robot to do it all for you.
Yep. And again, I,
Okay.
I would just say that the general, thing with all of this is like, however you plan to use it in competition, you need to practice like that. So if you plan
100%.
to rely on it smartly interpreting, I mean to drop the bottom 3 or whatever, then practice with that. And don't use it in ways that are totally different from anything you've ever tried before in competition, because that is a recipe for disaster.
Agreed. So you'll notice here that we're getting some errors, and that's undoubtedly because some of these people have fewer scores. So if we use our average points on Andrew here, we're getting an error. So if we wanted to edit that, we could see here's the steps that it's going through. The one way to audit that is something called cycle let steps. And what cycle let steps does is it's like the equivalent of copying this name, pasting it down here, copying this name, pasting it down here, and cycling through those. So if you do cycle let steps, now it's showing name here. And if I hit F4, which is redo, it's just cycling through them one by one to uh, get to the answers. So basically, once it does its filter by name, it's only getting one value. So the next step, which is filtered, is giving an error. So I think what we want to do is modify this to say if error, error, then just use all of them. So now we have fixed that. So now if we do save Lambda, hit enter.
Except now the save lambda is saved with the filter step active. So I guess you
Oh,
need to cycle back to result.
yes,
Which
yes,
actually
thank
I
you.
never thought about this before,
There's a
but
cancel
is
Lambda.
there
There's a cancel um, a reset. It's reset Lambda steps. Reset cycle
cool.
Lambda steps will reset it back
I was
um,
I was
to the
just
beginning.
thinking literally for the first time ever, like, oh, is there a way to just put it back to the last one? And there is.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah. So that's cycle let steps. There's one that's a little bit harder core, which is audit formula steps. And what audit formula steps does is it actually reverse engineers the helper cells off to the right outside the used range. So when we run that, so this is the cell that we just did that on. It generated all of this, and now we can see step by step what it's doing with all of the formulas all listed out until we get to the answer. So this is a way that if you are having some kind of you have a really complicated lambda with lots of steps, this will help you figure out where things are going wrong. And because it always puts it outside of the used range, there's nothing above or below this. I can just delete those columns and when I'm done with that audit.
And one thing to mention, I know some people have asked recently in the robot group about like relaunching that dialogue you get when you generate a Lambda statement, because it's an easy place to edit and move things around and whatever. If you run that audit formula steps and then make whatever changes you want and then regenerate from there, that is effectively a way to do exactly that.
Yeah, you're not always going to get the exact same result. So but it's close to being the same thing. Logically, it's the same thing. Um, one uh, I was just going to show something, but I forgot what it was. So what else do we have? We're going to skip input parameters. Do we want to talk about the importing all your lambdas?
Definitely. That is, I think,
Okay.
front of mind for people going to Vegas at least.
Yes, indeed. So we all have Lambda libraries. It's a file that you have all your Lambdas defined in already. So this file at the moment has a small handful of these Lambdas that we created. The way that I do it is if you have Array Robot Volume 1, it already has an import Array Robot Volume 1 Lambdas in it. So the way that I always do this is I copy that one to my Lambda library. So this is that Lambda Robot AMA here. So I just made a copy of that command into my Lambda library, and now I'm going to edit that, and I'm going to call this import AMA lambdas.
And just kind of link back to what we were talking about earlier. This edit you need the pro license to do, right? Because this is a VBA
That's
command.
that is true. And then the name of the file goes right here. So you're doing I'm calling this Lambda Robot AMA is the name of it. So those are the three changes you make. And then now I have an import AMA lambdas. And as long as if we go into a brand new workbook here and I run that import AMA lambdas, oh, Uh, I am not sure why that failed. We did not get our macros. Okay. Well, I think I'm going to have to take a look at what went wrong there, and you can put an update in the chat. But that's what you're supposed to be able to do.
Is the AMA file? Oh no, that is an XLSM. Okay, that was my guess, but it's not the issue. But I have done exactly that before. That's how I made my import
Yeah,
esports lambdas
I'm
command.
guessing I did some kind of a typo or something in doing that. I'd have to go back and look, but that's always worked in the past. So not really sure. AMA, Lambda Robot AMA.
Looks the same. Oh, is it because this, I'm assuming you can only use the short file name like that because it's registered. But I guess this command collection is not registered. So maybe that's the issue.
Um, that's possible, but I wouldn't think so.
I mean, otherwise, how would it know
Oh,
the
you know what
full
it
file
is?
path?
No, you know what it is? And I'm gonna have to put in a fix for this, but we created lambdas that are referring to a table. So those are not generic lambdas. You can't copy a lambda that's referring to an Excel table into a workbook that doesn't have that Excel table. So it's what it's
Yes.
happening is when it tries to import them, it's failing to import the ones that are referring to a table. And I'm going to have to think about like that's not really going to be a problem with your Lambda libraries.
Yeah, because you
Um,
wouldn't make ones that refer to data that's not going to come with it if you want to import them. But
that's right. That's right.
it's
But we'll put in a fix for that. I'm sure that removed if I removed the lambdas from here that are of that nature, like this one, um, these are general. That's general. So that doesn't work anymore. Now we come back over here and import AMA lambdas, and it worked fine. Yeah. So good. One more bug to fix.
good thing
So
there's only
some of
been one this month.
yeah, right. Some of the things we didn't talk about but are very cool is our input parameters. I do a lot of stuff with input parameters where if you have a formula, um, I do like what is it? Show formula text. So this is a robot command that asks the user a question. So do I want to put where do I want to put the formula text? I'll say above active cell, and it put in formula text in that active cell. And so you can ask the user things and then have those affect the results of your query. If I want to say keep top n, keep first n keep first n rows of the array, and I say I just want the first three. This is an input parameter that's asking, and it's passing those parameters in there. So you can, if you have lambdas, if you have your own lambdas that have a lot of like a parameter that has you have to put in 1, 2, 3, 4, and the 1, 2, 3, 4 has some like weird meaning for each of those. You can make it into a list box where you can choose using the English language version of those, and it'll put the corresponding number into the parameter as it puts it in the cell, stuff like that. So
That's very cool. I will say
I could
one
spend a half hour just on input parameters.
I will say one that I get a lot of mileage out of is that, I mentioned earlier that I have like paste with sum, paste with round, whatever. But I also have a command that's just paste with function, where it it has an undefined parameter. And when you run a command with a parameter that's not defined, it just pops up and says, what value do you want to put in? So I can say paste with function and just type in max, type in min, type in sum, type in
I
average,
love
type in
that.
whatever. It's super handy.
I love that. I have one for uh, group. Uh, is it group by function? It's similar to yours, but it does a group by, and then you can tell it what the function is that you want to apply as the aggregate. So sum or average or
Oh,
whatever.
cool.
And you can also type in a lambda. So you could say lambda x, whatever, um, and have your own custom calculation for that.
Nice.
Yeah, you can get very creative. Get very creative.
Kaz asks, is there a user guide that comes with a download? To which I think the answer
Oh,
is yes, multiply. There's a
so
there's a getting
the
started guide and there's
if
also help documentation.
if you type question mark, it'll take you to the OA robot documentation. You hit enter, and it'll put the documentation off to the right. This little show index thing is searchable now. So if I wanted to learn about the VBA command, I could do a search and pull that up and see the documentation on that. Any of
It's
these
cool.
things, any of these pages, you can hit this guy and it'll pop it open into a browser. It went onto my other monitor, but it opens it up onto our website, and all of this same documentation is all available uh, on the website as well. So we've um, spent a lot of time improving the documentation, and the documentation is live. So one funny thing is that when people ask us questions, we can actually make modifications to the documentation and then tell them, oh, it's right here in the documentation after we
Why didn't you
we
just look it
that's right, I was right there the whole time. Like,
I will say I will say that I started using Robot in a time basically before the documentation, or certainly before this level of documentation. Um, and and so I've actually never really read the documentation because I was kind of up and running before it came out. But I will say, I mean, there are some things like, which things you can put in double square brackets. I can't even remember what they're called.
application expressions
Application
and
expressions. Thank you.
yes,
Which application expressions you can use and things like that. It's definitely helpful to have all in one place. But the way that I learned like what robot could do was just going through commands that I'd seen Erik use or that are in Formula Robot or whatever, and just looking at them and saying, oh, okay, yeah, so all these paste with commands use this clipboard item, all these wrap with commands use the active cell, this command uses the active cell spill parent, whatever. Like it's the easiest way to learn. I mean, obviously, once you get more advanced, you will want to start putting things together in novel ways that have never been done before. But you can go a long way just by kind of piggybacking off, okay, well, this is how Erik did this, so I'll do something similar.
that's the goal of all these command collections that I'm putting out there. I don't want to write every command that everybody wants in the world. I want to teach you guys how to write commands and inspire you to create your own commands and inspire you to share those with other people so that I'm, not responsible for the entire world's robot commands. But when you do the help documentation on a command collection, uh, if you want to see what's in those, you can click on them, and this is the definition of it. So when you go into if you wanted to create this command, this is exactly the formula that I use. These are the settings that I set in order to do that. Yeah, so that's a great tip. Cool. Well, this has been fun. Did we cover everybody's questions? I'm
I
sure
think
there's
so. I've been kind of
probably
keeping an eye on the
always
chat.
could be more,
Uh,
but got to leave a
and
little bit of time for actually like writing some lambdas. I've seen your
all
list.
right.
It's very ambitious.
It is. I mean, the list that I put up on the screen is not even my full list. But I've made my peace with like I think there's about 2 more weeks in which I can write new stuff, and after that, I need to make a development freeze and just practice with what I have.
Yeah.
Um, But yeah, I don't know. I mean, this pick Lambda has just taken over everything else because it's amazing, but it's also
It
by
looks
far
really
the
cool.
most ambitious Lambda I've ever written, and I keep adding more things to it, and so it needs a lot of testing. But
Make sure you
it is
test it
very cool.
on large amounts of data because sometimes great idea lambdas come back to bite you in cases that have way more data than you're used to practicing with. That's
Yep,
happened to me.
that's a good shout. That's a good shout. I will say your
Table lookup lambdas.
your color bow
Oh,
command made I would say a tactical mistake that the original did not, which is um, when you're filling in color on a map, it's one of my only robot VBA commands is like this bright color from Legend thing. Um, if you fill in each cell, I mean, you won't notice with a 10 by 10, but with a 1,000 by 1,000, it will grind to a halt. Whereas if you build the array in VBA and then just have one thing where it drops that whole thing in, it's
yes.
lightning fast.
Yeah, yeah.
So
That was
yeah,
definitely a an example that I just put together. Um, the best way to do that would be doing it as an array and slapping it all down at once, or at least turning off if you do that loop through each cell, but you turn off calculation while it's running and then turn calculation back on afterwards. That'll also
yes,
run pretty fast, but the best is to fill an array and just slap the entire array down all at once. That's
yep.
good advanced VBA technique there.
All
Cool.
righty.
Well,
Well,
thank
Eric,
you. I'm
thank you
going
for coming
to
along.
drop out of the Zoom so you can do your thing, and I'll be in the chat
All righty.
following along and watching you in action.
All righty. Thank you for joining me. And I
Yeah.
guess now let me share my screen so we
All right.
can
Thanks, everyone.
carry on. Thanks for coming, Eric. Okay, so now we're seeing all kinds of random stuff, but okay, now I'm back in my Lambda file and well, I'll keep an eye on my screen and hopefully presently find out that it is visible on the stream. Oh wait, no, I'm not playing the stream on my phone anymore. Anyway, all right. Pretty sure that you can now see my screen, and if we can't, that'll become apparent soon. All right, so I don't think I'm going to do a full-on Lambda Lab today because well, because we've already been going for an hour and 40 minutes. Um, and I have some need to get moving. But Earth was packing. Oh, I guess packing is right, the thing I did, like filling shapes. So I think I'm just going to show you a couple of things. So one is last week's session ended quite anticlimactically with my computer struggling to process the filler for the almond case, and with even if it had run at full speed, a um, a setup that was not quite ready for the full solution. So I've played around with that a little bit more since, and now I have something that is quite a bit more general and quite a bit faster. So what's going on? So last week, if you remember, we had, let me just start with, so we have this shape to fill, which is 16 by 16 cells. We need to fill it with 64 like tetrominoes, like this square or this line or this S or whatever you want to call it, or this T or this L. And every one has to contain exactly one almond, and they have to not overlap. And so the initial setup for this was, um, let's flatten this grid into a column of 256 ones or zeros as a starting point. I think we started with all ones, and then let's consider all the different places that this thing could go and where that would be. So in other words, if you put the square here, there would be a one in positions 1, 2, I guess 17 and 18. And if you put it here, there'd be ones in 2, 3, 18, and 19, and so on. And so we basically generated this table. I think it was this one, which was um, all the different places that you could put a given one of these. So in this case, the pattern is pointing at this L here. Um, and where that would be in the 256 squares. So, this first one, for example, um, lands in positions 1, 17, 33, and 34, which is, in other words, like here, 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 and here. And then it also, so, and then it'll say, okay, what about here? And what about all the ones you can shift along, all the ones you can shift it down, but then also all the rotations. So, something like this and something like this and so on. So it figures all of those out. And then it also filters those so for example, this one could never be used because there's not an almond in it. This one could never be used because there's two almonds in it. So it filters it to just the ones that have a single almond. And then you can say, okay, for which of these shapes is it possible to cover the thing with only rotations of that shape? And you couldn't use reflection. So like this L and this flipped L were considered not the same thing. And so the way I had it kind of saying, okay, well, look for the first square that hasn't been covered. So, start with the top left cell, and look for any of these patterns where the first piece is the top left cell. So in other words, if the first thing I want to fill is here and something has something up here, then I can't use that because it's covering something that's already been covered, which is breaking the kind of no overlaps rule. So I looked, if I've kind of filled, let's say I filled the first row and then I filled out as far as here, and then this is my next cell I want to fill, then I look at all the ones where the first entry is that, and then I kind of split all those out and just keep kind of expanding cases until we get to the point where it's constrained and we kind of pull back. So we did that, and that was enough to figure out. Actually, even just this first piece was enough to figure out that, for example, this pattern was not possible because there was nothing here that covered the first row. In other words, the only square that could cover the first row is here, and that doesn't have a single almond in it, so that doesn't work. So like that shape could be immediately ruled out. This shape could, I think, could also be immediately ruled out because it did have one that covered here, but I think there was some row that it didn't cover or something like that. Anyway, or there was some position that it could never cover. But then, there were some of these, I think these three were all capable of covering every individual position. So then you had to figure out where they could go. But what we ended up with was, I think it was this one was the one where we kind of let it spin for a while. And yeah, where I was saying, okay, take out 3, take out 5, take out 10, take out 50. And by the time I was taking out 50 pieces, it was starting to strain, and you need to take out 64 pieces in total. It was just getting too calc intense. And it did get there eventually, but when it got there, it just said, here's, thousands and thousands of columns of all zeros, meaning there are thousands of different ways that you can cover this shape with, only rotations of this such that each one covers an almond. So there was an extra constraint as well, which was the thing about you have to balance the almonds to be equally often in each different position. So in other words, if there were 64 of these, there had to be 16 where the almond was in this middle position, and there had to be 16 where it was on, this first branch, and 16 where it was on this branch, and 16 where it was on this branch. I guess this was kind of a hint that it couldn't be these ones because if you can rotate, there's not really a distinction between these two positions. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. So here's where I went next. So similar setup. So I took the pattern, and let's just, this is my last. So just name that out and come over here and just start with, so this is my pattern, which right now I'm pointing at this guy, but I can point it at any one of these. Then my next thing was, and actually, sorry, since Erik reminded me of it, let me cycle let steps. And so this gives me the pattern and number, meaning, this is like 0 where there is no pattern and 1 where there is a pattern, but now with after the decimal place, a number to indicate the position. So this is, almond position 1 within the L, almond position 2, almond position 3, and almond position 4. Then cycle let steps again. And now this is giving me all the different places that I could put the pattern. So again, I had that lambda that would, basically slide it along all the different ways, slide it down all the different ways, rotate it all the different ways, and so on. That gives me that. Then do I just go straight from there to the end? I don't remember what I did next. Oh yeah, so then we filter to the one almond patterns. We get the almond number. Anyway, let's get back to the punchline. So what we get now is these 256 columns of pattern are exactly what they were before, which is, where within the 256 squares is covered. But then I have three other things as well. So I have the almond position. So, in this configuration, the almond is in position 3, meaning, the short end of the L. And in this configuration, it's in position 1, meaning the end of the long end of the L, and so on along. It calculates the first occurrence of a 1. So in other words, the first position this covers is 2. I had that kind of worked out separately over here, but just made it all part of the same array. And then it also has a number. So like this pattern is number 1, this pattern is number 2. There are 423 valid patterns starting from this guy. But if I start from this guy, because there are different almonds that covers, there'll be a different number. That's taking a second to calculate, not because of this piece, but because the bit below that does all the tiling based on that is also linked direct to this. So yeah, this has 398 valid patterns. And I made those three digits of text because it makes it easier to split them up later. So that's the setup. And then I basically took the Lambda we were working on last week, which said, okay, these are all the patterns, and my starting point is, 256 zeros. So from my starting point, and then I just apply it over and over again, I look for all the patterns that start in the same position as the pattern I'm looking to fill. And subtract those out. And so, if I have this one starting position, maybe there's like 10, probably not 10, but maybe there's 4 different orientations and rotations that could cover that. So now I have 4 different possibilities for where I could be after 1 step, and then after 2 steps I could be in, 15 places, and after 3 steps I could be in 100 places. But then, at different points the constraints start to come in. So like if I put one here and I put another one here, then maybe I've got an isolated box here, and so there's no way to cover that. And at some point those all drop out. You could make this more efficient. Harry mentioned it on the chat last week, by rather than just looking for the first place, by looking for the places where there's the fewest different things that could cover. So like, maybe somewhere down here there's like a square that can only be covered by one combination, because otherwise it would hit 2 almonds or no almonds or something. And that would make it more efficient again, but I didn't get to that, and I didn't need to get to that because this got fast enough. So instead of just subtracting off the pattern, this does 2 other things as well. So my starting position is how many pieces have I used that have the almond in position 1, position 2, position 3, and position 4? And then what is the string of all the pieces that I've used? And then what are the 1 zeros for the 256 locations? And then let me just show you. I think I called it 1 almond. No, remove almond. There it is. So this is the full thing, and then this is my subs, and so there's only actually one thing that can cover the first one, which is pattern 207, and that has the almond in position 1. So then, I don't know, let's just remove almond again, again with B8 hash. I just want to get to a place where there's multiples. Okay, so having done that, there's then only one thing that can cover the second one. Fine. If it goes any longer than this, I will have to make it a reduce, but anyway, B8 hash. Okay, so here then there's 2 different ones that you can use to cover the third one. You can use either pattern 102 or pattern 209. And then from here, it'll expand a bunch as we go along. B8 hash. So yeah, then after that, there's whatever, 5 different ways that you can cover the first, well, whatever, that you can place the first 4 things to make sure that you've covered the first 4 settings. So what it does is, A, it just builds up this string of which ones we've used, and B, it keeps track of this because, like I said, these have to be evenly distributed. And so if any attempted pattern takes any of these above 16, then it trims that. And that just means that the search space becomes significantly more manageable, becomes significantly smaller. And so we can just do this. So we can say reduce this starting point, sequence 64. So in other words, you're going to have to take out 64 pieces. It is Lambda Lab, Harry says. I think I missed the memo on time today. Yeah, so the Lambda Lab today is going to be pretty short and mostly just going back over some things that I did off screen, because most of today's session was introduction to Lambda Robot. But I wanted to show you the conclusion of the Almond saga. So yeah, we start from this, which is, no pieces in each of the 4 positions, no patterns used, and 256 ones. We apply this 264 times, and we just say if this QQQQ is the kind of, this broke, there are no matching patterns. So if it's QQQQ, then just stay at QQQQ, otherwise remove almond. And I'll just show you that, I mean, these few patterns we were able to kind of rule out immediately because they weren't able to cover everything. But let's just say I want, get that out of the way. Let's say I want to do this sort of T pattern or whatever you call it. So that will spin for a second, and then it'll say, nah, nothing doing. Can't make that one work. There are no solutions with that. And similarly, if you point it, resize and bring it over here, for this one, there are no solutions. So the only one that admits a solution is the L that's flipped the other way around. And with that one, we generate the pattern, and you can see that the fact that there's only one column here means that the solution is unique, and it is to use all these pieces. So then we can, it's hard to read this the way around it's written, but so we're taking mid of this list of patterns, 64, sequence of 64 numbers starting at 1 in steps of 3, take 3 at a time. So in other words, 207 is the first one, 208 is the second one. Then we're choosing calls from our list of possibilities on those numbers. So, column 207, column 208, and so on. We're dropping 3 from that. So in other words, we're dropping the metadata up at the top of the almond position, the first and the number, to just get the pattern. And then, so that's just giving us, well, let's just pull this part out. This will just give us, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to multiply by that yet. Get that out. So that just gives us, these are all the pieces. And if I do a by row sum on that, that'll tell me, 256 ones, everything is covered exactly once, all good. So then I multiply that by a sequence of 8, 8, so that, the first one becomes item 1. I had originally made this just a kind of straight sequence of 64, and then I made it this to make adjacent ones look a little more different, because that's how I did the coloring. So like over here, this is piece 1, and this is piece 9 over here, which is actually the second piece allocated, and then 17 is the third piece allocated, and so on. So yeah, you kind of multiply each one by a different number and then by row sum them to get, for the 256, the pattern of like which piece numbers are covered by, and then you wrap rows of that by 16, and you get this back, and then you just apply the conditional formatting, and it does all this cool stuff. Or you can also take the original pattern, and there's 2 conditional formats on here, or 3, I guess, because there's the vertical and horizontal lines. So there's one to highlight almonds, and there's one to highlight, one to put a border if the group that this cell is in, based on here, is different from the group that the cell next to it is in. So that kind of orders it all out. Harry also had a nice version that is, can I do his version? So there's a nice version if you look at the colors based on the position of the almond. It makes the kind of pattern of the whole thing a little more clear. Let me see. Can I make that happen? I probably can. Let's see if I mid this sequence, 64. Start at 1 in steps of 3. 3 times 1, that's my numbers. Yes. Then I want to choose calls of B8 hash by that. Okay, then I want to say let call it pieces be that. And then I think what I want is pieces. Sorry, I want drop pieces 3, which is, drop the metadata and just give me all of this. And then I think I want to multiply that by take pieces 1. And then so that's going to kind of multiply everything by the Hammond position for that. And if I by row sum that, and then wrap rows again in 16s. And then it'll look nicer if there were 4 different colors, but for now I'll just, oops, Alt H L S. Let's just grab a scale. Yeah, and you can kind of see it there. So like all the ones that are dark red are the ones where the Hammond is in position 1, meaning the top of the L. All the ones that are in dark green are where it's in position 4, meaning the kind of junction, and so on. And that makes it a lot easier to see, to see some of the patterns going on here. So you can, and actually let's see, I think I could actually take this, bring it down here. Yeah, and then you'll get the patterns as well. So let's Alt HLS that. Yeah, and now you can see the separations as well. Makes it a little easier to read. So you can kind of see the pattern that basically every 4x4 square has the same pattern, but some of them are rotated. So that this actually started as a Leighton puzzle that was about breaking up a 4x4 piece of chocolate, but obviously Harry's a monster, so he had to make it into a giant crazy version instead. But yeah, it did that by kind of putting together various rotations of these. Yeah. So anyway, that's uh, I did wonder after I wrote this whether I should, try to make this into a more reusable lambda that says, okay, well, you have a piece limit on how many times you can use each different type of piece and whatever. But I think it's sufficiently improbable to come up in competition, at least for now. The bar keeps rising all the time. Um, that I'm not going to do that. But that is where I got to with almonds, and it's very cool. All right. Now, the other thing that I did, again, off screen, I'm not going to do much Lambda development on screen because I'm going to have to wrap it up kind of soon. But the other thing that I did, I was playing with this case, the 24 hours of MEWC. I played this case almost immediately after I wrote my pick function. And I wanted to use my pick function on it, and I couldn't because it's not what my pick function was set up for in a couple of ways. So first, we have this list of drivers. There were questions about the team, where I wanted to be able to say, pick this team. But again, that's not what my thing is set up for. It's set up to say, to like match values. So in other words, if I say, X match, whatever, Jean Lacaze against this list of names, it gives me 9. But if there are 3 other Jean Lacazes or whatever, it still just gives me 9. And there's, good reasons that you would want it to work that way. But it does mean that if you're identifying the rows to pull out based on X match, that you're never going to get it. But that made me sad because I want pick to be, the function for all picking. It's more fun like this than the original. Harry, Harry, Harry. Uh, More fun for you, no doubt. Um, Sorry, where was I? Yeah, I want to be able to use pick for everything. So what you will see now is that pick has considerably more parameters than it used to. But I'll just show you how. So let's just start with. So it has, as before, it had array, row slice, row header, column header. And then it had this orient argument at the end. Now it has these four new arguments, which is really two pairs of arguments, which are kind of the equivalent of Xmatch, match mode, and search mode, except that they have a couple of other options as well. Um, so yeah, I wanted it to be able to do matches with repeats, and I wanted it to be able to do like range matches, like exact match or next bigger, next smaller. So I've just got one named range here. This whole thing is called D. So let's, I have my made earlier version if I need to, but hopefully I can just reproduce it successfully. So here I want to know about Team FMWC's steering ability. So the team name is the third column. So I'm going to say pick from D. My row slice is going to be Team FMWC. My column slice is going to be steering. My row header is going to be in column 3, and my column header is going to be in row 1. And then for this one, for the row, I'm going to say 4 for filter. So the options that I can put in here, I can put in exactly like with Xmatch, I can put in -1 to do exact match or next smaller item. I can put in 1 to do exact match or next larger item. I can put in 2 to do wildcard match, which I'll try to show you more of in a minute. I can put in 3 to do regex match. But I can also do 4 to do what I've just called filter, meaning give me all matches. So I do that, and that gives me all the steering values for Team FMWC, and then whatever I need to wrap that in round average. And I think that checks out. So that's good. Now this one gets a little more interesting. So a few things going on here. First, I need to figure out this driver's braking ability. So the idea is that I've got a base time, a reduction based on an attribute, and I need to multiply that by the attribute score. So the first thing I'm going to do is pick. I think I named this range base. Yes, that's base. So my row slice of that is just going to be, I want row 2 for now. And then my column slice is going to be breaking, but notice that this is breaking, not, breaking cells. Then my column header is going to be row 1. And then my column filter is going to be 2 for search. In other words, search for this text in here. And that is going to give me 4, which is the base speed for a breaking cell. And so then I want that plus the other piece below it, which again I can just use pick with row 3, and then I need to multiply that by pick. So I need to pick Lorenzo Early's breaking speed. So it's going to be pick from D. My row slice is this. My column slice is this. My row header, I think the drivers are in, yes, are in column 2. My column header is in row 1. And that's it. And then I need to multiply the whole thing by 100 and round, but whatever. That part's just details. Cool. Now, this one gets more complicated. I have already made the adjustment to the table to add in a second. I'd like to convert these to times and to add in a second entry. So this was originally, 4 p.m. to 10 p.m., 10 p.m. to 4 a.m., 4 a.m. to 10 a.m., and 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. But because we're looking at a time within a day, a time, well, let's just, if I take these and just format them all as numbers, that's 4 p.m. is 2/3 of the way through the day, 0.67, 10 p.m. is 92% of the way through the day, and so on. But if I look for a value that's less than 4 a.m. With exact match or next smaller item, it wouldn't match against any of these because it wouldn't naturally wrap around. So you just need to add in one more to cover the range of midnight to 4 a.m. And that the values there are just a copy of this. And then again, I think I named this whole section all the way down to there as night. So then I'm interested in figuring out, given the time of day and just the time of day, I want to figure out the starting fatigue and darkness, the reduction based on attribute, and we'll go from there. So I want to pick from night. The row slice is the time of day, which is going to be this. The column slice is going to be, I just want the second and third columns. Or no, sorry, I don't want this because this is multi-cell. So let's say I want from the second last column to the end, which I can just do as that slice style -2 to the end. The row header is column 1, and I don't need a column header. And then for my row, I want exact match or next smaller item. And so that gives me 5% and 20%. Oops, 5% and 20%, which are indeed the values for late at night. So that's that. And then, so I want to say that plus pick from night. I want the last row, which is where the adjustments are. And again, I want from -2 to the end. And then that one needs to be multiplied by pick from D. I want my row slice to be this. I want my column slice to be, let's just take the two names, endurance and nighttime driving. Sorry, not F4, F9. My row header is going to be column 2. My column header is going to be row 1. And that's it. I can't remember how. Am I adjusting these right? No, there's some weirdness about this. Sorry. Would help if I remembered how this worked. So it's 5% times 1 plus that. Okay, sorry. So it's times 1 plus this. Gets me to 4.6% and 19.26%. Yes, that's right. And then I need to 1 plus these and product them together. And that gives me my 1.25, like that. And then I need to basically reproduce the calcs up here for the base driving time. Need to repoint those. So Lorenzo braking, braking, and braking. And then multiply those two together. And then again round, but whatever, details. Yeah, so now it's now pick does filtering, it does inexact match. So basically I wanted to kind of as much as possible replace what I normally do with filter with XLOOKUP with blah blah blah. Let's just show you a couple of other things. So where do I want to start? So yeah, it's a little fidgety to set all this up. I'll show you the code in a minute, although it's enormous now. But so a couple of things I wanted. One is I wanted the slice to still be able to have multiple options. So let's just say, let's say I want team names that start with T or that start with B. Or actually, let's say I want driver names that start with that. So then I can pick on D. My row slice is this, and my row header is column 2. And my row match mode is going to be regex, because those are regex patterns, if I've done them right. Oh, sorry, yeah, and let's just say I just want column 2, which is the actual name. So these are all my driver names that start with B or T, so you can have multiple regex patterns. Let's take a crack at turning pick into a series of commands. That could be interesting. That way you don't have to remember what all those parameters do. The robot commands will help you with that. The interesting thing with this is I think that this is so utility that I will use it like 1,000 times in the course of practicing. I don't, even though it has a million parameters, I have not found it difficult. It's not that long since I wrote it, which probably helps, but I have not found it difficult to keep tabs on which parameters I'm using. But it's a good thought. So let's say I was interested in anyone that contains. Now, one thing you do have to be careful of is regex is by default case sensitive, which I might add an option for that to adjust that, but I haven't done that yet. And because I'm using, actually no, I'm using regex test for this one. So anyway, so many potential parameters here. I'm also kind of tempted to put in an if not found parameter and other things. But anyway, so that's that. It also, let's see, what do we want to do? Uh, let's say we wanted people from Team FMWC whose braking starts with 9. Admittedly, a weird way to use this. And it doesn't do filter for like greater than. I don't have an immediate good way to do that unless I make it handle lambdas like Erik's table lookup lambdas, which is tempting, but also would increase complexity quite a bit. But so I want to pick from D, uh, and let's say I'm interested in um, Team FMWC. We'll just put team because I don't know if any other teams start with that. Uh, Followed by anything, followed by a comma, followed by anything. Sorry, not followed by anything, followed by space, and a 9. Um, so I want, in other words, the team name to start with team and the braking to start with 9. Um, and the comma in the middle is because the way that I handle headers being multiple columns is with array to text. So we're basically going to, instead of, matching on just this column or just this column, we're going to be matching on a by row of these two columns together, array to text. So my row header is columns 2 and 5. And this is regex. Will that work? No, that didn't work. Oh dear. What if I do that? No, this doesn't like that. Oh dear. I might have broken it. Like I said, I haven't done a ton of testing on this yet. The column, let's say we just want column 2. I don't need column headers. Did I mean to do regex? Yes, regex is the right one. Well, that's disappointing. All right, let's try something more straightforward. Hang on, let me, I was looking at Kiwi Holiday for this. It was a good one. Kiwi Holiday. Ugh, hang on. Yeah, that's fine. I'll just pull it up. FMWC 2025, MEWC. No, sorry, Road to Las Vegas. Round 9. Case and answers. So let's start with a more straightforward version. There was this one about finding the families where the first attribute is this and the second attribute is this. So here's my families. I'll just name that whole thing F. And then I should be able to say pick. Oh, sorry, import my lambdas. And then I'll be able to do things with it. Pick from F. And then my row slice is going to be array to text of these. My column slice is, let's just say I want just the family name, which I think is the first column. The row header is the second and third columns. Column header, I don't need a column header because it's a number. Yeah, that works. And then I think I got it to work even that I could say, let's say I want to put all of these in at once by row that array to text. Yes. And then you need to wrap it in an if error because there's some no families. It just says no family, no families. I can't remember. No family. Cool. So I guess I have not got that working on regex yet, which is disappointing because I thought it would. Let's explore that a little more because that's bugging me a slight bit. So let's say I'm sure I tested it with regex. Maybe it's just the pattern that I used is not good. So let's say I want A followed by something followed by H. And then I want to pick from F. My row slice is going to be this. My column slice, let's just say I want the family names. Actually, no, let's give all the columns. And then my row header let's say I want the first one starting with A and the third one starting with H. So that would be the second and fourth columns. And 3 for regex. Yeah, that worked. Attractions in history. I was hoping I'd find one that had other combinations. Whatever, I don't know. Say AH or AS. That worked. So we've got attraction in history or affordability and scenery both coming through. That's good. Um, hmm. So what did I do wrong over here? Try getting rid of team. Try getting rid of that as well. Just say anything followed by a 9. No. Did I get the column numbers right? That could be important. 2, 3, 4, 5. Ah, fuck it. I didn't get the column numbers right. That didn't save me. Um, hmm. Don't know. Not sure what I could be doing wrong there. Um, okay. Let's try one more thing. Let's try T followed by anything followed by comma space P. And now I'm looking on team, which is column 3. Oh, hang on a damn second. Did I? Oh, it's this column is wrong. Ah, there it is. There it is. Okay, I was just pointing in the wrong place. I might need to find a way to make this more robust, which actually I think I have set up for that. If I said instead team and breaking, no. Uh, hmm. Interesting, interesting, interesting. All right, so anyway, so you kind of see the idea here. It's still not a complete filter replacement because, if I want to filter where, this is greater than such and this is less than such and such, this isn't going to be the best way to do it. But it is getting more powerful. Um, let's, what if I'm a little sad that this is not working. It's breaking the right column. 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, it is. That doesn't work. Empty array. All right, so let's edit Lambda. I will show you. I don't think I'm going to attempt to explain everything, but so the high level structure, lots of arguments. Then we get into a let. We define the slice lambda. That is just, that pattern gets used twice because we want to slice by rows and slice by columns. Then we get into pick with no slice arguments, which is just the function using the slice argument. So it's, if it's two-dimensional, meaning the number of rows and number of columns are both greater than 1, then we index the array by the row slice and then by the column slice. And if it's one-dimensional, then we just index the array by the row slice. And then the output is, if both row and column slice are omitted, then you just return the function that can later be given slices. Otherwise, you call the function on row slice and column slice. So that's the high-level structure. The bit that has changed, the couple of bits that have changed in here are here. So that, slice now obviously also has more parameters, but the relevant piece is if filt is greater than 1, then we're going to filter on different options. So there's this is all made more complicated by the fact that this could be oriented by row or by column. And so we have to switch between by column, by row here, and between 2 column, 2 row there. But so this is saying search for each slice in each header, and then check if any of the slices matches. And if so, bring back that number. And we just have like sequence to give us numbers 1 to n in the same shape as headers. And then this one is saying regex test each of them. Again, each sliced against each header, and find out if any of those is true. And then the last one that the contains is just saying is number x match headers against slice. Yeah, and then we carry on the same as before with the if there's colon in it, then that means we're looking for regex splitting stuff all the way on down here. And if there's not, then we have, if both of the filter and the last to first are omitted, then it's just a regular, sorry, if these are both present, then we have this. Otherwise, it's the slice and the adjustment. So it's the bit where this calculates the headers that I guess is potentially failing for the regex test. Let's just see. So the headers, if count A headers is less than max dim, so that's where you've got multiple headers but less than the size of the array. So in other words, if I give it, this would expect whatever 10 headers. If I was providing it, this is the list of headers. If I give it less than that, then it interprets it as these are the numbers or identifiers for a subset of that. If count A headers equals 1, then echo. Otherwise, lambda x on this. Okay. So this, I can replace this 2 col and 2 row with an attempt to match, like first match the headers against, oh, can I? No, I can't, because then I'm trying to use headers to do two things. No. Oh, okay. So this is getting complicated now, because what I'm trying to do here is I am trying to say that I want to combine these two headers based on name. To do that, I would have to say my column header is 1 so that it's looking for these in the column header, but then I'd also need to pass the column headers into the slice call. So that is complicated, but I would like to be able to use this format because, as you saw, when I was doing it by column numbers, it was very easy to make mistakes. But I guess the alternative, at least for now, for usability, would just be to, do this either permanently or just at the time I'm setting it up and then just hit F9. That turns it into 3.6. Whew. Okay, so yeah, these are the drivers on Team FMWC whose braking starts with 9, or actually technically whose braking contains 9, because if I made this one F59, that would still match the pattern. But if I change the pattern to say comma space 9, then the 59 here would not match because the way it's doing it is, sorry, I need to stack them because array to text only takes one argument. It's stacking this and this. Sorry, yes. And so, yeah, if you wanted to match on the start, then you can match it on starting from comma space. If you want to match it on anywhere, then you don't need to do that. So anyway, yeah, I don't know. I don't know how often I'm realistically going to be searching for multiple regex patterns, but I guess one vaguely plausible situation is the way I have it set up here. Uh, I've got my cards. I've also added in some other weird cards just as I was messing around with testing. But if, for instance, I was interested in, I don't know, I've got let's say I've got an ace of hearts and I want to filter for, sorry, Control Shift V, and I want to filter for anything that would match with that either on ace or on hearts, then I could say left of that, oops, left of that, I could say right of that, and then I could say pick from this list of cards, where my row slice is this, and my row header is 1, and it's contains, which is 2. And that would give me everything that is an ace or that is a heart. And again, I've added in some weird stuff here, but don't worry about that. Okay, I think that is going to be it for hang on. Somebody has a question in the chat. How can I simulate a division using scan like 5 rows divided? I'm not sure I understand the question. How can I simulate a division using scan like 5 rows divided by the grant? Oh, I think I understand now. So if I had something like scan 0 this sum, and you want to be able to say percent of total, I think you would just say divided by sum. and that's, whatever. Here you're at 1 out of 3, you're at 33%, and so on down. And I don't know, if we make these more interesting numbers, then the first one is 17%, and then the first two together are 50%, and the third is 100%. I'm not sure if that's what you meant, but yes, cool. All right. That is it for today. I am in an Airbnb down in Florida because I am competing in the Florida. Well, competing is not the right word. Attempting to finish the Florida Ironman tomorrow. So yeah, I gotta go pick up my bike and get drop things off and get everything set up. So wish me luck. And yeah, thanks for coming today. And let's see, where do I need to go? I need to go over here in stream. Boom. Alrighty.